Okay, moving on to the crisis of disability. This is the second category of client that I thought we would cover or visit as we did this chapter. And so this begins, I think, on page 259, yeah. And there are actually even some additional cases for disability. And so feel free as we meet on Wednesday, if you want to practice using one of these other cases with different kinds of disabilities than the first one that I read to you, then we could use that. So people with disabilities are more prone to crisis. They really need a crisis worker who understands their stressors. And so I want you to think carefully about what is stressful about being a person with disability. You know, is it not being able to find employment because people don't think you can do a job? Is it loss of feeling attractive to people because you're in a wheelchair or you use crutches or you have an amputation? Is it because you have lost your concentration or your vitality? Is it because you can't stand for people to pity you? And when you go out in the world, in our culture, that you just see people feeling sorry for you all the time or cutting their eyes away and not even being willing to have a conversation with you? There are just all kinds of ways that being disabled can be stressful and can prompt someone to feel like they're in a crisis. And so I think it also depends on the particular limitation that the person has, and I've mentioned some of those already. But be thoughtful when we approach this subject on Wednesday about, you know, what makes it hard to be a person with disability. Another piece that I would ask you to think about is that sometimes a person's family either overemphasizes their disability or sometimes even underemphasizes it. So in overemphasizing the person's disability, they might overprotect you, they might not let you try hard things, they might worry about you trying something and then falling down and just try to be protecting you too much from, you know, living your life. And that can feel very oppressive and create some resentment too. And then on the other hand, I guess there could be family members who underemphasize the person's disability, and maybe they, you know, overlook things that need to be done, or they just, you know, don't think about things getting increasingly harder. And I think the thing that's interesting to think about in this regard is that in that case, a person might be reluctant to ask for help. They might feel like they should be able to manage themselves, or they used to be able to manage themselves and they can't stand that they aren't able to now. They might also be feeling like they don't want to be a burden to their family, and so they're perhaps reluctant to ask for assistance when things change and get harder. And this can create a crisis, right? There could be a blow up at home because the person didn't ask for help and the family member didn't know they needed help. And so you might find yourself entering into a crisis situation of just that sort. We can't overlook, this is the last thing I want to talk about, that people who are disabled are definitely at a greater risk for being abused. And this is certainly true of elders, and we know that people sometimes experience elder abuse, and it might be that the family member never meant to be someone who would abuse their loved one, but then, you know, it gets to be like that. Or it could be that the family member who is taking care of the disabled person doesn't have the best personality for that, and is not compassionate or protective or even able to treat that person in a way that's, you know, without risk. So that's another crisis that a person might end up disclosing to you, is that they're not being treated right, and or in fact that they're even being mistreated. And this is something that requires, again, I think, some careful training and some careful communication and investigating. And so, you know, if you find yourself working in a situation where this could be a possibility, it definitely is something that you need to learn more about. And there are resources out there. I personally would probably contact someone from my Aging Services Division of the DSS in my county and ask about things like this, maybe ask about resources for learning, because this is a very tricky situation, of course. So I hope when we meet on Wednesday that we have a productive session, and this will be probably our last Collaborate session in this class. So I look forward to seeing you. Thanks.